Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from 670 The Score and the Mullen Haugh Show. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune. The day before, I guess this will drop the day of the Bears' fifth game of the season against the Washington Commanders in the nation's capital. Dan, busy Wednesday at Halas Hall. A lot of people talking, a lot of speculation. How would you describe the mood at Halas one day before the fifth game of the season?
Yeah, no, I think this is a team that is eager to get this losing streak behind them as soon as humanly possible. I think the weight of that has been adding up, and you can feel that in the building. I think there's a hope that some of the really positive things they did against Denver can carry over. But again, it's a short week, and we talked about it last year about how the short week challenges for a young team are more sizable because guys are still trying to figure out how to streamline their routine, figure out their preparation, figure out how to get their bodies right. And it's not always easy. It's even more difficult when you got to get on a plane and go on the road. We'll see how the Bears handle it.
We want to thank everybody for listening to us on the Take the North podcast through some very difficult weeks. A lot of stuff going on, and we appreciate your time. You can also follow us on your free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. Watch us on 670 The Score's YouTube page. Let us know what you think with some feedback. We always appreciate that. Let's get things started today with our opening drive.
It's time for the opening drive.
Dan, there's some big picture things that I want to get into, but I think let's start with some of the details, the injury report. A little surprised to see Jaquan Brisker on it, safety with a hamstring problem. Boy, that's a difficult blow if he can't go or if he's compromised because they're already dealing with uncertainty in the health situation of Jaylon Johnson, Eddie Jackson, Kyler Gordon, and Josh Blackwell. What happened to Jaquan Brisker?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit frustrating to see his name on the report because this was a light week. They obviously just did walkthroughs on Monday and Tuesday and then tried to have almost a regular Friday type of practice and atmosphere on Wednesday. Look, you have to be added to the injury report if you receive treatment on something. And so Matt Eberflus kind of downplayed the extent of Brisker's injury when he spoke to the media after practice. We'll see what this looks like on game night. More significant is what you also mentioned is that they're already down Kyler Gordon. They're already down Eddie Jackson. They're already down Jaylon Johnson. This secondary cannot afford to keep losing bodies, particularly without a pass rush that has any teeth to it right now. So that's another thing to keep tabs on here. We know, obviously, the Bears, since we last talked, went out and signed Duron Harmon off of the Ravens practice squad. So that's a veteran presence that comes into your building. How quickly he can get ready to play a game in your system, I have no idea. But these are all things that we're keeping tabs on here as the Bears head into Week 5.
Hello, Duron. I'd like you to meet your secondary mates. What's your name again? Because this is a very patchwork group in the secondary, and it doesn't matter if your quarterback is Sam Howell or whoever. An NFL quarterback, when you have those kind of weaknesses in the secondary, potentially probably going to look pretty good. You need to pressure him. I wonder if that's the plan, but you can't put your secondary under that kind of duress. So this is not looking good, trending well heading into Washington.
It's all of the like nothing is trending well. And I think that's like the thing that is the most agonizing. Look, like the offense, I think, had a little bit of a breakthrough against Denver. And then just when you wanted to feel good about it, you have those two fourth quarter turnovers and the 4th and 1 that doesn't pick up the first down. And you go, man, like every time you feel like you have something to be encouraged by, you get something twice as heavy to be discouraged by. So we'll see which direction it goes. It's just, it's crazy to me, the tone of this season right now, where we're at. It's October 4th, and we're having some of these heavy big picture conversations about what this means for people all over the organization. And with all that I've been through in my decade plus covering this team, I've never been in this state this early with the discussions that are being had about a team that conceivably might not win for 365 straight days or longer. So we'll see what they can do. And I think everyone would be relieved if they could get over the hump just once here very soon.
Before we get to what Matt Eberflus had to say about that on Wednesday, Teven Jenkins is cleared to come off of IR, has done that. There was some suggestion by Luke Getsy that he might be able to play. I know you wonder about his conditioning, Dan. I wonder if the Bears are desperate enough to try to play him. What do you think his status will be Thursday night against the Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, he really hasn't practiced since the Bears were in Indianapolis for those crossover practices, which is, as you know, was 3 lifetimes ago in terms of the stories that we've had to cover since then. We thought that Teven Jenkins injuring his calf on a conditioning run was going to be the most embarrassing thing to happen to this team for 3 months, and it's like 9th now. It's dropped down to 9. So I don't know. I mean, they seem optimistic about the ability. I feel like that might just be a little bit of gamesmanship here. I've all along been of the belief that they're going to want to give him a full week of practice leading in, and it'll be a longer week next week leading into the game against the Vikings. That seems to be a more sensible and reasonable runway for Teven Jenkins, particularly for a guy who's had an injury history, right? It just doesn't make sense to get reckless with it, throw him back out there in a short week without much practice time. He has something that aggravates it, and then you go, man, why did we do that? And he's out another 3 weeks. So worth keeping an eye on. The Bears have until 4 p.m. Eastern time on game day to make that official activation. If not, then we're looking into week 6 for that to become official.
How surprised are you that there's not been an official transaction regarding Chase Claypool, who remains part of the Bears, remains part of the organization? As we tape this podcast, there was some speculation. We talked with Brad Biggs about possibly getting cut before they have to pay him. He is now, I guess, on the exiled list, on the injury list with a designation of other. But how would you describe your surprise or reaction to the way the Chase Claypool saga has played out this week?
I mean, I chuckled when I saw the official designation on the injury report on Monday as other. You're just like, okay, it's like causing headaches for other people. That's basically what other is right there. I don't know what they're planning to do here. Obviously, I think they're trying to squeeze something out of this, before there's a permanent separation here. I would be stunned if he was back in the building a week from now. So what is it you're trying to do here? Do you have somebody on the hook? Is there somebody on the line saying, hey, we're interested in at least talking about this for a conditional late round pick up the road, whatever it is? I don't know, but you would hope one way or another that there's a resolution to this, like very firmly, by the time you start your practice week next week, because I just can't imagine, with all that they have tripped through this week, that it would be worth their time to play around with this for much longer.
So you alluded to it, but the big picture focus this week, both at Haugh Hall, I think, among the media corps and around Chicago, has been the status of Matt Eberflus. And I think a couple things have dictated that conversation, or at least influenced it. Peter King was on the score. Peter King, the well-respected, long-time NFL journalist who used to work for Sports Illustrated and now is working for NBC Sports. And he is as plugged in as anybody who covers the league. He went on the score on the Parkins and Spiegel show and speculated that if the Bears lose in a bad, embarrassing fashion, and we know how likely that could be, that the Bears may respond to that by firing Matt Eberflus. And I think this comes on the heels of our colleague and friend Brad Biggs addressing that on a fairly consistent basis in his weekly 10 Thoughts column at ChicagoTribune.com. And obviously it's out there. It's a different era in the NFL, Dan, but how do you think you describe your reaction to the reporting on this, or the speculation, and then take us through what Matt Eberflus had to say in response to the questions on Wednesday?
Well, look, like I've got a little something for you in numbers game when we get around to that on this topic. I think you phrased that well just a minute ago, that the reporting or the speculation. Peter was very straightforward on his interview on WSCR, saying, on this particular topic, I have no inside information. I'm just surmising here that with the way things have gone for the Bears and how bad of a state they're in, that nothing's off the table. And so I think that has kind of gotten legs, probably more than Peter intended, as he just kind of pontificated, knowing what he knows about the state of the team right now. I find it difficult to believe that the Bears launching Matt Eberflus comes with follow-up plans, right? Like you and I have talked about this, about like, what do you do then? You're already down a defensive coordinator. Now you get rid of the guy who's calling the plays and overseeing the entire team. How do you rearrange all the deck chairs on the Titanic to make sure everything is still in place? I think there's a belief that, you launch them and you move on, and you've already embarrassed yourself enough. Why go through anything further? Well, look, like you can embarrass yourself much, much more if you don't have the infrastructure in place to then, adjust to new reality, to not have the bodies, to not have the leadership, to not have the direction of things here. And so it seems drastic to me. It really does at this stage, in week 5 to be here, particularly given what we talked about with what the depth chart, like the next man up thing on the coaching staff. How do you do that? How do you rearrange that in any way that makes sense and doesn't put your team in a more disastrous state? We'll see which way it goes. Look, I think everybody inside that building, David, would prefer it if they just went out and won Thursday night and we could just punt this backwards a week. Matt Eberflus, basically said on Wednesday afternoon after practice that he stays where his feet are, tries to focus on the task at hand. He says he feels support from the brass above him. Hadn't had any specific conversations on it. So look, like I don't know how you compare this to patch.com from a couple years ago, but these are two stories that kind of start to mushroom up, and now you're kind of dealing with those inside the building to some level.
Yeah, I think there's a new category of sports reporting, I suppose. That's even sports media. Informed speculation is kind of the term, and a lot of people engage in that. And I don't think Peter started off his conversation intending to light a match or anything. I just think that people like myself, I mean, we talked about it for a good part of our Wednesday morning show because people are curious. And Dan, I think people also look around professional sports, and the patience levels of owners and executives is as short as it ever has been. So I think that we all want to cover ourselves in terms of talking about the range of possibilities, and the range of possibilities is as wide as ever because of some of the economic realities in place here. And
so I'll ask you this: have you been able to get to that next step on the connect the dots chart in your own mind to say, okay, if they do that, then what?
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, only hypothetically, I think that that's the part that creates, I think, probably the biggest source of the speculation is that I've always been a believer that you're not going to make a move unless you considered the alternative and thought all the way through. And in doing that, I think that your possible interim coaches would be guys on the staff who don't have maybe the gravitas or the experience or maybe even the respect in the locker room, which is something that I can't speak to. But Richard Hightower, I don't know if that would be a good move or disastrous over the final 12 games. Luke Getsy, I don't know if that's a smart move either. So I think those are the guys on either side of the ledger to be candidates to be interim head coaches if you go that route. I don't know about the idea of bringing somebody in like the Colts did a year ago, firing Frank Reich in 9 games into the season and let Jeff Saturday kind of learn how to coach and go from high school to the NFL. I don't see that happening. Although, again, because of the way the Colts handled that, I think has lent itself to why some of the speculation has been as wild as it seems this week. We just saw it happen in the NFL a year ago, and I wonder if people are trying to cover themselves. I'm with you, though. I would be, as I said, I think I used this term on the radio, the gobsmacked. I would be very surprised if Friday morning we're talking about the Bears have called a press conference to announce the firing of Matt Eberflus. I can't believe we're even having this conversation. We're 5 games in, but it's the way of the world and the way the NFL works these days. So I guess part of me does understand it.
So I have another question for you in a second, but it was just 2 weeks ago that Ryan Poles was in front of the media expressing his confidence in Matt Eberflus. Now, the two things that have happened since are you were down 41-0 at Arrowhead Stadium, and the next week you gave up a 21-point lead at home to a team that was winless. So that changes the thought process, certainly, to some extent. And we see those images from the game on Sunday of Poles up in the box at Soldier Field and Jeff King with his face in his hands, and they're all just trying to wrap their brains around all these things. My other question to you is, like, do you feel depressed that this has become a leading topic of conversation in the first week of October in our city?
All right, I answer the first question first. The fact that we haven't talked about the presence of Kevin Warren, I think, makes everything a little bit more uncertain because we don't know what direction he wants to take this in. That's the only factor that is different from previous controversies, previous seasons where we've speculated, the patch.com, for instance. We don't know how Kevin Warren is going to respond to his team that he is the president of being embarrassed on national television and then in front of his home fans. We don't know how he feels about the dysfunction that has spilled over in the way of a very odd explanation for Nate Davis's preseason lack of practice time that spilled over into Alan Williams resigning under mystery, which spilled over into Chase Claypool being banished from the building. These are embarrassing, dysfunctional episodes that have nothing or very little to do with being 0-4 and having, 14 straight losses. Last thing on Kevin Warren before I get to your second question. He has also been part of something where the established precedent. He was a commissioner of the Big Ten where he canceled football. And then a short time later, after that, circumstances changed, and everything that he said about canceling football, what didn't apply because the situation changed, and he was not too stubborn to go back to what he has been part of changing something because of historical precedent. And I think that I don't know if that is relevant now, but I wouldn't dismiss it in thinking about why what Ryan Poles said a couple of weeks ago is no longer valid because everything changes quickly in the NFL. Now, as far as the conversation, does it depress me? No, I think I'm a realist, and it doesn't necessarily depress me. There are a lot of things to be disappointed about in the state of today's mainstream media, sports media, reporting in general.
Oh no, I don't mean it from a speculation. Does it depress you? It's more from the standpoint of like, my God, we've got a long way to go in this season, and how in the world is this going to be interesting if we're already at press the button and launch everyone state?
Well, that's interesting, Dan, because I've been on both sides of this. Now I've been where you've sat and at the facility every day, and so if I were in that position, I would be I would be kind of in a different frame of mind because there's a drudgery factor that sets in. Is like if you return from Washington D.C. on Friday and the Bears are 0-5 and you're considering a coaching search and a coaching change and a lot of bad football and there's 3 months left in the season, yes, I can see why you'd use the word depressed. I'm in a different seat. I'm in a different vantage point, and I've had the benefit of being, up close and at the facility every day, and now I'm not. So from where I'm not at now, I don't necessarily. I understand why. I guess it doesn't wear me down as much because I am trying to think of practical solutions. I do want to look at it as less of a drudgery as much as it could be a quick fix or changing the subject or finding a solution. You got to stop the leaking. So you call. You call the plumber. You do whatever you need to do to live another day, to move on. So I think that's where I'm looking at it differently. I'm not in there in the sausage factory. I'm just looking from afar and hoping that everything turns out well.
Yeah, well, hopefully something turns out well at some point.
Yeah, and I think that it's easy to sit here and we don't want to diminish too. These are people's careers and families are involved, and I don't think that you think we're talking and people are like, well, you guys cover the team. Why are you put out? The people that are involved, I can't imagine what it would be like to be Matt Eberflus's family right now. I mean, they had a good situation in Indianapolis. You get the job and the opportunity of a lifetime, moves to Chicago, and now they haven't been here 2 years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, did we rent or buy? And I asked somebody that today. It's like, if you wanted to settle in Chicago as a coach of the Bears and you don't even finish, a season and a half, if these reports or this speculation comes true, then you start to feel some empathy in a job that really doesn't require that to be, on the air covering the team. That's not part of it, but you can't help but have some.
No doubt. Yeah. Yeah. And whew, we'll see which direction this goes. Again, when this is the second of 5 games in October, you're hopeful that it's not an embarrassing loss. You're hopeful that there is signs that they've moved in the right direction. But again, they're beat up. We'll get our predictions in a few minutes. I don't think anyone here is picking the Bears to win. So buckle in and see what Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday have to hold.
All right, let's get into that with our numbers game and predictions. All right, we'll start with our numbers game. We'll get to those. We bring them every week, and then we'll get to our predictions and bring in Adam Studzinski as well when we get to that point. All right, Dan, what are your couple numbers to point out?
I got 4 of them for you today. The first one is 6. It's the number of sacks that Khalil Mack had. on Sunday for the Los Angeles Chargers. It matches the Bears total for the past 9 games. The entire defense for the past 9 games has had 6 sacks. Khalil had them in one game against the Raiders, his former team, on Sunday. That's one that that hits a little weird.
It's a little weird. It comes in a week where I think Nicholas Morrow had a big
3.
game. Travis Gibson had a big game. And there was Mario Edwards Jr. had a pretty big game. Those are
And the
4
Seahawks had 11 sacks themselves in a game on Monday night, right?
Is that all? Okay, that's a good number. Thank you you talk about depressed. That'll depress you.
All right. Second number, 471. Let's cheer up for a minute. That's the number of total yards that the Bears had against the Broncos on Sunday. It was their 6th highest total of the past 10 seasons and their most since that Week 4 blowout in 2018 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when Matt Nagy was just a young up-and-coming Coach of the Year candidate, and Mitch Trubisky was still brimming with positive potential in a season where he was headed to the Pro Bowl for the first and only time. 471, nice number to chew on as they go to Washington.
Do you remember that day? I mean, that was as hopeful of a day. That Monday morning was crazy in Chicago because you felt like the quarterback had arrived. They obviously wasn't a great team, but he had 6 touchdown passes. Matt Nagy was here, and everyone was
defense was nasty. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Defense was nasty. Vic Fangio was grumpy, and everything was going great.
No question. Those were the days. Them were the days. All right, I'm going to flip here. 30. That's the number of plays that Commanders quarterback Sam Howell has had this year where he has been sacked or turned the ball over. He's been sacked 24 times. He's thrown 5 interceptions. He's lost 1 fumble. The Bears obviously only have 2 sacks and 2 takeaways as an entire team through the first 4 games of the season. But, man, that's a young quarterback who has shown a propensity to have negative plays here and there. You better find a way to get a couple of those per quarter just to keep yourself rolling here. And let's see if the Bears can do that.
Now, Sam Howell, that's a North Carolina quarterback you can trust.
Yeah, I hear you. So, all right, my last number is minus 260. That is both the odds on the Washington Commanders to win Thursday night's games, and it is now the odds that I've been receiving in my inbox from a number of betting institutions that say that Matt Eberflus is now the odds-on favorite at minus 260 to be the next NFL coach fired. So to our previous discussion, this is now intensified in the gambling markets, and just when you put those 2 numbers side by side and you understand kind of the probabilities, right? Like this one is, will the Commanders beat the Bears on Thursday night? The other one is, will this guy be the next guy fired? And they're equal. You go, whoa, like this is kind of the perception and the reality around the league.
The only person who views that news as good news is Brandon Staley. He's no longer the odds-on favorite to get fired first after he makes some dumb decisions.
And the Bears will see him later this month. I love Brandon Staley. That's my guy. Stay off him.
That's your guy?
I love Brandon Staley.
I mean, I like him personally. I think he's a pretty interesting guy. As a head coach, he's a very hard to defend head coach. I can't wait till that week.
Yeah, we'll have all sorts of time at the end of the month to
4th and 1 on your own 25. Let's figure out a way we can blow this one. What do you got? What do you got in the hopper this week, Brandon? Okay, fine.
A read option up the gut with 2 missed blocks. Oh wait, never mind. That was
that's the wrong bad coach. Okay. All right, so let's do our predictions. I don't have any numbers because I want to get right to our predictions because we want to give Adam Studzinski as much time as possible for his Meatballs and Studzinski segment. I guess we're going to dovetail that into a prediction segment today. Hey, Studs, what do you think, Bears and Commanders?
All right, so first off, this is something that's been stewing in my brain for a while. I just want to express it. Commanders is like one of the worst nicknames in all of sports history. Like, they had a golden opportunity in front of them after they got rid of that racist name to pick a really cool name or do something really cool. Like, there was the storyline about like the Red Hawks would be a really cool name for them for historic reasons. And they didn't do it. It was like, hey, let's just pick a random name because we forgot this is due today. And they went with Commanders. There's 2 teams in the state of Illinois, high school teams, that are nicknamed the Pretzels. That's a better nickname than
Freeport,
Commanders.
right? Freeport is one of them?
Freeport and New Berlin. New Berlin's near where I grew up in Central Illinois.
Okay.
That's a whole nother story. Why there's 2 teams like that, I don't know, but that's still a better nickname.
The Totopolis wooden shoes, for those who don't know about the Totopolis wooden shoes downstate.
That one I did not know either. So anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest. I can't. It still bugs me, and I know that Dan Snyder is out now, so maybe there's an opportunity to rename the team again. But Washington football team was a better name than Commanders. They could have just
No,
stuck
it
with
wasn't.
that.
No, Washington football team. That was terrible.
I thought it was less lame than Commanders. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they went from that to Commanders, and it's like, oh, so you're going from one lame name to a lamer name. Cool.
Like I'm with you here because I feel like Commanders is like the name that they give the team on a video game because they don't have the licensing rights to the actual league names, right? And
Seriously.
then it's like, oh yeah,
or like Wildcats. Like every little league team has the Wildcats, right? And so anyway, now that that's aside, and here's my pick for this week. I think that my prediction on the Score website actually had a smaller version of that rant that I just went on about the Commanders nickname. And then I said that Sam Howell is not a good quarterback yet. He's been off and on. And so anyway, my prerequisite last week, if you guys remember, was that if the Bears can't score at least 25 points against the Broncos, I'm not picking them again for a while. Well, they got over 25 points, and I know I'm making a bad pick, but I'm just going to pick them because I feel like picking them. So I'm going to go Bears. What did I say in the website? It doesn't matter. Bears 25, Commanders 24. Ooh. And just because I'm feeling ambitious and I want to be right when everyone else is wrong, we're going to say the Bears get 2 sacks, which is wild, and 2 turnovers, which is even wilder. And Justin Fields throws 3 touchdowns against a weak secondary.
Wow.
And I'm just making that up off the top of my head. Again, I know I'm going to be wrong. So I might
25-24?
I know I'm going to be wrong, so I'm just going to be really loud.
I'm curious how they're going to get to 25, but
I'll throw a 2-point conversion in there.
All right, that's good. All right, 25-24, Bears over Commanders. Adam Studzinski's in the books. Dan?
I have the Bears beating the line, but not beating the Commanders.
Jeez.
Commanders 27, Bears 23. This front that Washington brings to the table is pretty nasty. You've got Payne and Allen on the inside. You've got Sweat and Young on the outside. You've got an opportunity to make life a little difficult for the Bears offensive line. I am not feeling comfortable with the secondary depletion as we talked about in the opening. Terry McLaurin's still a tough cover in this league, and he's going to have an opportunity to make some big plays down the field. The Bears have not shown us anything to trust when they're in close games with a chance to pull out the win. They just haven't shown anything. They have shriveled so many times that I need to see it to believe it. And so they're going to have to win a game, I think, before I pick them again.
I don't think I'm going to pick them to win until they prove they can win again. I do like your prediction for what the Washington defensive line will do to the Bears offensive line. Pain.
Hey, let me ask you guys this.
Prediction. Pain.
Do you guys think the Washington defensive front is better or worse than last year? Marginally better, marginally worse.
In 4 games, probably what I've seen is probably marginally better. Maybe.
Pretty similar, right? I mean, like
very similar. Yeah,
they're similar. Because I've heard back and forth on this, and a couple people have said they're not quite as good. So I mean, they're still very good. Don't get me wrong. It's just I was thinking about last year's game, and the Bears, despite not scoring touchdowns, did move the ball on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what did they finish the night with? Like 13 points?
7 or no? I can't. What was it? 7?
Yeah,
it was 12. It was 12 to 7. Hey, wait, listen to what I said. I said I know they didn't get the ball in the end zone. I said I know they didn't get the ball in the end zone, but they moved the ball.
Al Michaels fell asleep.
Classic Bears fandom. They got 7, but they were effective.
They were close. Dan, there were 5 plays that if they converted, they would have scored 37.
Yeah, I mean, no,
Studs,
he's mad at us now. He's mad at us now.
All right, finish your thought, Studs. Go ahead.
No, that's it. That's all I got. I was trying to make a point that they did move the ball, and
a couple times.
I know that they didn't get the ball in the end zone, and that's all that matters. But I was trying to think when I this is what I do when I go through making a pick. I'm just going to pick the Bears anyway because that's what I do. And because I don't like, making picks is kind of it's for fun, right? So I'm just going to, so anyway, I'm going through and I'm thinking, okay, Commanders line's about the same as it was last year. Very good. Bears offensive line is a little better than it was last year. Not good, slightly better. It's like in The Simpsons, that episode where Rainier Wolfcastle is trying to figure out how to say up and Adam, and he keeps going up and Adam. And the guy's trying to get him to say, and he's like getting frustrated, and they finally stop, and he goes, better. So that's the Bears offensive line is like marginally better. And so I think they will be able to move the ball. Now, whether they can punch the ball in the end zone, they get in the red zone. They've been good in the red zone this year. So that's the glimmer of hope that I get to when I pick them to win a game.
Who will drop the pass in the end zone this year?
It wasn't dropped. It was caught.
Oh, that's right.
It was caught a bit. Yeah, it did go down as a catch.
Bobbled at the one.
Bobbled at the one. That was
caught. It was a completion. It was Mooney.
All right, it was Mooney. I forget some of these games. They all run together.
So just for the record, for a trip down memory lane, I watched that game from my basement. I was in COVID quarantine for that awful Thursday night game, and I thought my head couldn't have hurt any more after that game.
I'm picking 27-20 Commanders over the Bears. I just can't see the Bears. They're back to their getting stuck at 20 offensively. I hope they come out and explode, because we need the subject to be changed. I hope that we're talking on Friday morning about the Bears have some sort of offensive execution that, they play 4 quarters like the first 2 against the Broncos, but it seems very far-fetched to expect that, even though that would be a great story in Chicago.
Yeah, like I said, I know I'm making a bad pick, and that's fine.
You don't have to have a disclaimer, Studs. You can pick the Bears without offering a disclaimer. We get it. It's okay. But we're just saying that there's always every game where you can say, well, these 6 plays. If they had these 6 plays, we would have a playoff team.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on the rant next about all the drives that Justin would have finished if those guys had just caught a 4th down ball at midfield, and then there would have been 6 plays to put the ball in the end zone, or if the guy didn't fumble at the 30, the next 3 plays would have put the ball in the end zone. All the woulda, coulda, shouldas, but we don't have time for that today.
All right, let's get to our 2-minute drill. Let's move on to 2-minute drill.
The 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill.
All right, Dan, unrelated to the game itself, but I think the stuff surrounding the game, and there's a lot of it. The Washington Commanders, this is the first time the Bears have played them since the $6.05 billion sale to the Harris Group, and Daniel Snyder no longer part of the equation. The Harris Group squarely involved. It has created a sense of enthusiasm in the organization, a new start, a fresh start. And I just wonder, Thursday night, when people are watching this, Bears fans in Chicago, I can tell you just from the talk radio response, every week after the Bears lose another game, everybody wants them to sell the team. Do you think that there's any kind of instructive lesson or takeaway from seeing what's happened to the Washington organization, the Washington football team, and what new ownership has done to infuse that with enthusiasm and energy, and what it could be possible if the Bears ever went down that road?
Very different situations. There was such a level of toxicity in Washington that just, as embarrassing as things get at Hallis Hall, there's not that level of grime. It doesn't appear on a regular basis like they had under Dan Snyder. So I don't know. What
that's a good distinction. I'm glad you said that, because I don't want to suggest that. Because you're right. There is no comparison that way.
Yeah, and so some of that it was almost inevitable and necessary that the Commanders made that fresh start. Now, obviously, they're benefiting from it. I don't know where they take that, other than to say that, as the years unfold, things will evolve.
What else you got in terms of things that we haven't covered? We mentioned the problems in the secondary. We mentioned Teven Jenkins. Anybody else going to be involved that may be new to the equation? How many wide receivers will be active this week?
Well, some of that is, like Chase Claypool's exit opens up opportunities. We saw Velus Jones. I think he had a double-digit gain on a run the other day, but then it got negated by a penalty. Tyler Scott was more involved. You've got opportunities for some of these younger guys to step forward and seize opportunities with reps being opened up in the receiving core. We'll see where they go. I did think that there was a lot of good stuff, and we didn't have enough time this week to talk about it because of the short week and all the drama that was swirling. The Bears offense did some wonderful stuff through the first 3 quarters of that game against Denver. One of my favorite sequences was at the start of the second quarter when they hit the touchdown pass to DJ Moore. They come back and they stop a kickoff return inside the 10-yard line, get a quick punt, take over in plus territory, and go right down the field again for another touchdown. When you talk about just like beautiful complementary football and the momentum that can create, that sequence was one that, like, if the Bears win that game and they avoid all this other swirling drama, we would have talked about it for 8 or 9 minutes. So I gave it 30 seconds there because I thought it was a beautiful display that could be learned from.
How would you describe the tone of everyone else who has talked this week. I know it's a short week, but has there been a rallying factor around Matt Eberflus? Has there been people offering their defense or asked about it? How would you describe overall what it's been like this week in the few days at
Yeah,
House?
I'd say nondescript. I don't think it's come up very often. I don't think there's been a heavy rallying cry at all. I don't think there's been a stomping on the escape lever to kick him out the door either. But look, like this is the next chapter, and you've got a big game here. You're going to follow with the mini vi and a longer time to prepare for another losing streak, the division losing streak, which regardless of what happens in Washington, the Bears will host the Vikings a week from now, trying to win their first NFC North game in a long, long time. And a lot of those games have been blowouts. And so I just think there's an urgency here right now of guys that have been through this for a long time and being like, I'm done with this. And we've got to get on the right side of one of these soon.
Were you surprised that Luke Getsy was as candid as he was about Justin Fields' role in that fumble that led to the touchdown by the Broncos? Because he essentially described the play and placed a lot of responsibility, I guess I should say more than I expected him to publicly, at the feet of Justin Fields.
And like I'm refreshed by that. And this is how Luke has operated from the get-go since he's been here. It's that, anything that he has felt comfortable discussing with Justin, he feels comfortable that sharing, and being a little bit more explanatory about how things are supposed to work and how they're not. Look, like I think we would both agree that Justin has very little time to react to that situation that was presented there, but that's going to be a reality going forward. If you want to get him out of the pocket and you want to use bootlegs and you want to use nakeds to get him out of a zone that's uncomfortable for him, which is inside the pocket. Well, now these are things that you're going to have to adapt to. Teams are going to play you a certain way. Teams are going to bring free runners at you. I thought Luke was really good in saying, look, in the touchdown pass to Herbert, Justin encountered a very similar situation and navigated it well and bought himself time and threw a touchdown pass. Now you got to do it in another critical moment there in a way that, you take the proper depth, you do it with a little, different timing and maybe you buy yourself, as we talked about the other day, another 3/4 of a second to either make a play or at least get rid of the ball so that you live to see another day. I didn't find it to be damning at all. I thought it was just explanatory, and I think Justin would probably tell you the same thing.
Anything else going on that we haven't covered? I mean, it's very quiet at House Hall, right? It's just nothing, just another week.
Just on a personal note, on Saturday morning in Lincoln Park, I'm going to be back in the Race to Cure Sarcoma 5K. This is in honor of my father who passed away 2 years ago from sarcoma. There's an opportunity to still register, I believe, for the race online if you Google Race to Cure Sarcoma and go on and to donate one way or another. Maybe I'll get a Twitter link out soon to people that can contribute to that cause. Obviously, something that my family feels very strongly about, given what we went through 2 years ago. And so looks like it's going to be a nice weekend. And so the race this year is down by the lake and down by Lincoln Park. The Chicago Marathon is Sunday. So I will not be running 26.2, but I can get in my 5K and feel good about myself.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's great. That's great to know. People should check that out. This marathon is Sunday. I'm actually going to be, I'm not running in it, but I am going to be out there as part of the score broadcast. I'm not going to have an active role, but I'm very curious. So I'm looking forward to going out on the path and on the trail. I know some people who are running that. I've done a lot of several stories over the years with people who have run the marathon. It is a transformative experience for a lot of people that I've talked to and written about. And it's just something that I think is worth going out there to observe. And that's what I'm going to do. That's my first baby step. I'd love to run in a marathon one day. I don't think that I could, but I do want to see what it's like. So big weekend, definitely. You're running for a great cause. And on Sunday, a lot of people running for themselves, and it means a lot. So this is a big weekend of running after we get through the Bears Commanders on Thursday night.
Yeah, it should be fun. Hopefully I still have some legs in me after Bears Commanders.
All right. Safe travels out there. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast on your free Odyssey app and watching on 670 Scores YouTube page. For Adam Studzinski, Dan Wiederer, I'm David Haugh. We'll talk to you after the game with a quick reaction. Studs and I will weigh in while Dan is beating deadline, and then we'll get back on our regular schedule next week when the Bears have a mini bye when anything is possible. Thanks for listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.